What if the ultimate secret to unlocking higher states of consciousness, establishing world peace, and basically saving the human race had absolutely nothing to do with deep meditation or biohacking and like everything to do with just remembering to go to the bathroom?
I mean, it sounds completely absurd at first glance. We are just so conditioned to believe that spiritual enlightenment or ultimate success requires escaping our basic biology, rather than leaning into it.
Right. Well, welcome to the deep dive. Today, for you, the listener, we're exploring a set of excerpts from a really specific and honestly fascinating text. It's titled Standards of Perfect Human Nature by an author named Xue Feng.
And before we jump into the actual mechanics of this, we should probably establish a quick baseline about the source material. It touches heavily on spiritual, religious, and deeply philosophical themes.
Yeah, it mentions gods, Buddha, the greatest creator, and these various states of enlightenment.
Right, which makes this the perfect time for our standard reminder.
Hmm.
Our job here is not to endorse any of these viewpoints.
Yeah, we aren't telling you this is exactly how the universe works or that you need to, you know, adopt this belief system.
Exactly. We are just here to impartially map the internal logic of the text. We want to understand the architecture of this author's philosophy, see how the pieces fit together, and figure out what we can learn from it, totally regardless of our own personal beliefs.
So our mission today is to figure out what this author actually defines as perfect human nature and why the ultimate secret to a transcendent life might actually just be embracing the beautifully boring, highly regulated reality of being an ordinary human.
And the architecture of this text is actually quite grand right from the jump. To understand the author's ultimate goal, we really have to look at the stakes they lay out at the very beginning.
The stakes are huge.
There really are. The text posits that achieving this perfect human nature is an absolute structural prerequisite for survival and happiness. For the individual, the author claims it's the only way to reach what is called a supreme life space.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because supreme life space sounds like a metaphor for heaven, but the text treats it almost mechanically.
Yes, very mechanical.
It equates this space to a state of guaranteed happiness and a bright future, kind of like a higher dimension of operation where the friction of daily suffering simply doesn't exist.
And that mechanical interpretation is crucial here. The author isn't just talking about feeling good. They are talking about establishing a sustainable operating system for consciousness.
And that scales up massively.
Oh, absolutely. Beyond the individual, the text argues that perfect human nature is required for humanity as a whole to establish a value system of justice, peace, and happiness.
Without it, humanity is doomed to this endless mechanical cycle of competition, confrontation, and war. So the stakes are literally the survival of the species.
Yeah, and to save humanity from tearing itself apart, the author lays out a blueprint. It's a set of 8 specific conditions that define perfect human nature.
Now, looking at this list, I notice it doesn't read like a standard set of religious commandments. It groups into these really fascinating behavioral themes. Like, on one hand, you have a theme of profound reverence.
Right. The text demands reverence for the greatest creator, for gods and Buddha, for nature, and equally for other people.
And that equal weighting feels really intentional.
It is. Reverence in this context acts as a neutralizing force against human arrogance. I mean, if you revere nature and your neighbor as much as a deity, it becomes basically impossible to justify exploiting them.
Which bleeds perfectly into the next theme I saw in the conditions, which is essentially total ego death in the realm of ambition.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, the text explicitly states a person must have no mind of losing and winning and no mind of combating.
They must be modest, trustworthy, honest, sympathetic, and compassionate. Oh, and they need to stay calm in both good and bad times.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, wait, that's your catchphrase, but I see exactly where this is going.
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the author is describing a consciousness that produces zero societal friction.
Zero friction. Just think about the energy the average person expends on combating.
Yeah, climbing the corporate ladder, arguing on the internet, stressing.
Energy that prevents humanity from reaching that supreme life space.
And there is a final theme in these conditions that really stands out, which we could call groundedness. The 8th condition demands that we love life and labor.
Right, you don't get to just sit on a mountaintop, you have to work.
Exactly. But it's actually the 7th condition that acts as the linchpin for this entire philosophy.
The one where the author writes, conform to the laws of nature and seek not the special and abnormal.
That's the one. This is where the text separates itself from conventional self-improvement. The author is deeply concerned with what happens when humans try to step outside of their designated operational parameters.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this right out of the gate.
Go for it.
Defining perfect human nature as strict conformity to the laws of nature kind of ignores the fact that human progress is entirely based on defying those laws, doesn't it?
How do you mean?
Well, we fly in metal tubes at 30,000 feet, which primates aren't naturally meant to do. We use synthetic antibiotics to nuke natural bacterial infections.
That's a fair point.
We build temperature-controlled environments so we don't freeze in winter. So does the author genuinely believe modern medicine or engineering is a violation of our perfect nature?
So, to address that tension, we have to look closely at how the text defines a natural law.
Okay, how do they define it?
The text states that a natural law is the law existing within everything that determines its orderly operation and development trend.
So it's broader than just like living in a cave.
Much broader.
Mm.
It's not about rejecting technology, it's about rejecting the arrogance of thinking we can ignore the fundamental rhythms of physical reality.
Oh, I see. So an antibiotic might fight an infection, but it still operates strictly within the biological laws of chemistry and cellular mechanics.
Exactly.
But if defining a comet's orbit or cellular biology as natural doesn't inherently rule out human technology, what exactly are we violating when we seek the special and abnormal? Like, what is the text actually warning us against?
The warning becomes really clear when you look at the vast scale of the examples the author provides.
The scale is wild. The text jumps from the macrocosmic to the highly microscopic, treating them as absolutely equal in spiritual weight.
Yeah, on the cosmic end, you have the movement of the solar system along the galaxy. Or you have a comet appearing in Earth's visible space exactly every 76 years.
Like clockwork, the mechanics of the universe.
And then the text scales down to Earth. Seasonal changes, climate shifts, plant germination, growth, flowering.
And the animal life cycle of birth, aging, and death.
Right. But then the author places completely mundane, daily human acts directly alongside those massive cosmic events.
This part of the reading was just so interesting. The text explicitly lists eating and drinking, working at daytime, and resting at night.
And literally peeing and pooing as reflections of natural law.
Yeah, the author equates the biological necessity of digesting your breakfast to the gravitational forces spinning the Milky Way.
And the rhetorical device there is brilliant, honestly. The author strips away all the glamorous, mystical aesthetics of spiritual enlightenment.
Because elevating basic biological functions to the level of universal law means you cannot bypass your body to reach enlightenment.
Exactly. The body's needs are the physical manifestation of the Tao, the universal order.
And the consequences for violating these mundane laws are brutal, too. The text states that violating natural laws is the main cause of human sickness and what it calls special events.
Meaning massive negative disruptions in a person's life.
Right. And the author provides these stark, mechanical examples of these violations.
Like what happens if the Earth flies out of the solar system? It turns to dust and ashes. The system collapses.
Or if a farmer sows his seeds in autumn instead of spring, he gets no harvest. The rhythm is broken.
And if people don't eat, drink, or go to the bathroom, well, they die.
You literally can't outthink starvation. The text says, this is the rule and this is the law. It treats biology as an immovable wall.
So going back to your earlier point about defying nature, the author's argument is that you can't actually bend these fundamental biological and physical rhythms without breaking your own machinery in the process.
Right. You might think you're hacking your sleep schedule to be more productive.
But structurally, you are just sowing seeds in winter and wondering why your mind feels like it's starving.
Okay, so if the punishment for breaking these rules is so severe, and the rules themselves are as obvious as needing to eat and sleep, I just don't understand why humans constantly obsess over bypassing them.
It's a great question.
Like, why is there a multi-billion-dollar industry dedicated to hacking our biology if it just leads to burnout and system collapse?
Well, the text actually tackles the psychology of that urge head-on. The author acknowledges that most people have an unconscious, deeply rooted desire to seek exception, to be outstanding, or to acquire the power to control the forces of nature.
And the author makes a really sharp distinction here. Daydreaming about being exceptional or having some incredible superpower is categorized as a completely normal phenomenon.
Right. We all want to be the hero who can pause time or fly.
But the moment you implement that desire into action, it crosses a threshold.
Exactly. The text labels that action an abnormal phenomenon. Actively trying to acquire what the author calls exceptional functions explicitly violates the law of nature.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. Let me try out an analogy here to see if I'm grasping the mechanics of this.
Go for it.
Think of the daily grind of eating, sleeping, and working as the necessary friction of a car's tires on a road. That friction is what allows the car to move forward.
Makes sense.
Having a daydream about flying is fine, but actively trying to bypass that daily friction, pursuing these exceptional functions, is like throwing that car into neutral and redlining the engine.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you might feel a massive surge of power and noise, but you aren't actually moving anywhere. You aren't engaging with the reality of the road. And eventually, the engine just violently tears itself apart.
That analogy maps perfectly to the text's internal logic. The author argues that pursuing abnormal phenomena does significant harm because it fundamentally distorts normal mental activities.
Right. Your mind requires the mundane anchor of biological rhythm, the friction of the road, to process reality correctly.
If you sever that anchor to chase the exceptional, the psyche loses its structural integrity.
And when the text talks about these exceptional functions, it sounds like it's referring to literal superpowers or extreme esoteric abilities. It mentions people chasing states of super time and space.
It does. But the author doesn't deny that higher states of consciousness or supertemporal states exist.
Oh, they don't.
No, the warning is strictly about the methodology. The text mandates that a person should never give up basic, grounded self-improvement to specialize solely in exceptional functions.
Because making those functions your primary goal leads you down what the author calls an astray and evil path. That phrasing is so intense.
It really is. It implies that seeking enlightenment through shortcuts isn't just ineffective, it actively corrupts the user.
And to understand the weight of that warning, the text provides this fascinating piece of historical context.
Yeah, the author points to the period following China's reform and opening up. During this era, there were massive waves of public activity focused on self-refinery and improvement.
Right, millions of people suddenly had access to various practices and movements promising spiritual elevation or physical mastery.
And the author concedes this cultural wave had some positive baseline effects, but highlights a catastrophic mechanical failure at the core of the movement.
What was the failure?
Millions of participants engaged in practices that actively went against the laws of nature. They were attempting to immediately acquire exceptional functions without doing the mundane, foundational work of perfecting their ordinary human nature first.
They were trying to throw the car in neutral and hit the gas. So what was the fallout of that mass movement, according to the text?
A massive misallocation of human potential. The text states that despite the sheer volume of people participating, very few actually gained any exceptional functions.
And more importantly, even fewer managed to understand the Tao, right?
Exactly. Which in this context refers to the fundamental truth or natural path of the universe.
Yeah.
They failed because they tried to bypass the physical prerequisites of enlightenment.
So if the shortcuts corrupt the mind, and mass movements dedicated to exceptional functions ultimately fail to reach the Tao, how do we actually achieve transcendence?
Because the text still maintains that the ultimate goal of life is to pursue perfect human nature and extend life in a higher space.
Right. It's not a philosophy of nihilism. It just violently rejects the shortcut.
The path forward relies on a philosophy of profound patience and sequential growth. And the author uses a highly relatable analogy regarding education to map this out.
Oh, the doctorate analogy.
Yes. The text points out that if you want a doctorate degree, you can't just walk into a university graduate program at 6 years old and demand a PhD.
No matter how much you want it.
Exactly. You have to respect the sequence. You go to primary school, then high school, then college, and finally graduate courses. Every level builds the structural capacity in your brain to handle the next level.
And the author writes, success comes from hard work, reinforcing that the sequence cannot be hacked.
You can't skip the primary school of life.
Mm-hmm.
And according to this text, the primary school of life is radical, unapologetic normalcy.
The mandate is absolute. Because we are human beings, we must first behave according to the laws of nature governing human beings. You have to fully inhabit your humanity before you can ever hope to transcend it.
And the text lists the curriculum for this primary school of life, and it brings us right back to the mundane biological baseline.
Right. We have to eat and drink, we have to pee and poo, we have to study, work, rest, and have fun.
We have to subject ourselves to the entire unglamorous process of birth, illness, old age, and death.
Only by mastering your relationship to those unavoidable physical realities can you build the solid foundation necessary to realize transcending and realize your dreams.
You don't get to bypass the sickness and the aging. You have to learn how to maintain your perfect human nature while enduring them.
Maintaining your calm, your compassion, your lack of combating, even when things are difficult.
Exactly. And the author issues a final directive that feels almost surgically targeted at our current cultural moment.
The text says, remember, more haste, less speed.
And then it demands that we take back the messy and scattered and floated mind.
The messy, scattered, and floated mind, that perfectly diagnoses the modern condition, doesn't it?
It really does. I want you, the listener, to reflect on your own daily cognitive state for a second. We exist in an ecosystem of constant engineered distraction.
Oh, completely. We are perpetually looking for the next optimization, the ultimate biohack to make us superhuman, the diet that will cure all fatigue.
Our minds are incredibly scattered, floating away from the physical reality right in front of us, as we desperately try to be anywhere but where we actually are.
We literally treat our ordinary lives as an obstacle to our real lives. We think, oh, once I optimize my morning routine, then I'll finally be peaceful.
And the author offers a radical inversion of that thought process. True mastery isn't about escaping your ordinary life. It requires a radical, complete acceptance of being totally ordinary.
The final advice in the text is to set your mind, find your direction, follow nature, and you will succeed.
Because failing to do so, continuing to chase the abnormal and pursue exceptions, results in being lost and caught by the devil.
And in the mechanical language of this text, the devil doesn't necessarily mean a guy with a pitchfork. It sounds like a metaphor for total psychological and systemic breakdown.
Right. When you push past your natural limits for too long, your operating system crashes.
You lose your anchor to reality. Okay, let's pull all these threads together and recap the journey we've taken through Xu Feng's text today.
We started with the monumental claim that establishing a perfect human nature is the only way to save humanity from endless conflict and secure a supreme life space for the individual.
And we discovered that the blueprint for that perfect nature is an operating system defined by total reverence, a lack of combativeness, and strict adherence to the natural laws of the universe.
And crucially, we learned that those natural laws aren't just cosmic events like comets and seasons. They are the unavoidable, mundane, biological functions of eating, sleeping, working, and aging.
The author argues that attempting to bypass this daily friction to acquire exceptional functions or superpowers is a trap that distorts the mind and leads to systemic collapse.
You don't get the doctorate without passing primary school. You don't reach a higher state of consciousness without first mastering the art of being a perfectly ordinary, functioning human being.
It takes the concept of spirituality and drags it entirely down to earth. It suggests that the profound is hidden inside the mundane.
Which leaves us with a final thought I want you, the listener, to consider. We began this deep dive by questioning our modern exhaustion with life hacks and shortcuts.
Right.
If we apply the internal logic of this text to our own lives, if the highest possible spiritual achievement is simply to exist in perfect, ordinary harmony with nature, how does that alter the way you view your most repetitive daily routines?
Tomorrow morning, when you wake up, when you brush your teeth, when you make your coffee and sit down to work, what if that boring, repetitive cycle isn't the obstacle keeping you from transcendence?
What if doing those ordinary things with a calm, grounded mind is the exact physical manifestation of transcendence itself?
It completely changes the value of a Tuesday morning.
It really does.
Something to deeply consider the next time you find yourself wishing for a cheat code to skip the daily grind. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the standards of perfect human nature. We hope it sparked some new ideas and challenged how you view the rhythms of your own life. Until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep learning.